Thanks, Mike. So what I'm going to do today is discuss a bit about, in more details, go over what Jeff had said, and specifically for the data platform itself. So I'm going to start off again giving this overview of some of the data, and then I'll get into how you access that data, and then discuss a little bit more about the metadata, and then move forward with some of the user information that we have, and then also some aspects of some of the challenges that we have and some of the lessons that we've actually learned over this year. So I think it's important to note that Canoe data has been available for about a year, so we're pretty fresh in that regard. So Canoe data is organized into 6 different data themes, and those data themes are transportation, neighborhood factors, noise pollution, air pollution, greenness, and climate and weather. And I'll talk about 4 of those today. Data teams are currently producing data for transportation and noise pollution as well. So all of our data are brought in from users, or they're compiled or processed in-house, and they're all at the postal code level. So that is the key linkage between our data, the exposure data itself, or data producers that we have, and the health data itself. So it's important to remember that. So getting into the neighborhood factors is the first data theme that I'm going to discuss in a little bit more detail. And so currently we have, and these are data that are currently available at Canoe. So the material and social deprivation indices is a data set that probably a lot of people are familiar with. It's been used in public health research for extensively. And so we have that data. It's at the dissemination level for the census years in Canada. And so 2016 data should be coming on soon. Just recently, in the last, I think in the spring there, we added Canadian Active Living Index, or the CAN-ALE. And so this is an index that tells you about the friendliness, or the walkability, in other words, of neighborhoods. And so this is available for 2 census periods. And again, these are national scale data sets, so I think that's important to keep in mind. Nighttime light is another one. This is a data set. This is available from 1992 to 2013. In terms of air quality data, these national scale data sets are from partners either in academics or in Environment Canada has helped us produce some of these data. So we've worked closely with and collaborating with them to produce data sets. In this case, we have data which has already been open and available, but we've taken this and again put it to the postal code level for fine particulates, PM 2.5, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and ozone. And so we work closely again with our partners to produce these data sets and make them available. Greenness is another data theme that we've focused on here. And these are data sets that have been produced at multiple resolutions in-house at Canoe. So we're looking at 30 meter, 250 meter, and 1 kilometer spatial resolutions for different aspects of looking at, for example, the average NDVI or maximum NDVI. For the weather and climate themes, here we've actually worked with Natural Resources Canada to create, they've made a custom interpolation at the postal code level for us to produce daily maximum min temperatures, total precipitation, consecutive days above and below thresholds, those type of statistics, again, for the national level for extending back, in this case, to 1985. So those are the data sets that we currently have in the data platform. And so now I'll just talk a bit about some of the data that we're expecting to come online. And so it's data research and development that we're doing. So local climate zones is something, if you came to our first day, we had a workshop, we discussed a bit about local climate zones. And this is something quite interesting. I think we're excited in the next few months to get this on. It's really, it tells us about the physical nature. It's a classification that tells us about the physical nature of the cities. So looking at things like surface cover and then the structure of the city itself in terms of some of the buildings. Another data set which we have currently developed, and we've actually acquired Google Street View imagery for all 800,000 plus postal codes in Canada. And we, on a custom basis, are providing green view indices. And the case you see here is Ottawa, which is a study which we've recently done. And finally, we've acquired for the next year a subscription to Planet Data, so 3 and 5 meter resolution data, which will allow us to investigate some really interesting aspects of the urban environment with high spatial resolution and, in some cases, high temporal resolution data. So we're currently in the planning and acquisition stage of that with Canoe. So how do you access these data? Well, there are 2 ways to access the data. As Jeff had mentioned, You can actually go directly through Canoe to the website, and the second way is through pre-linked data to health cohorts. So making these available through two different options, I think, is a really good way to open up data for data users. In each case, you're going to select a data user agreement, and you fill out the appropriate information. So we want information about the project summary, and then agreeing to things like referencing or citing data sets is important here. So in each case, the important part that you have to be affiliated to an academic institution to gain access to the DMTI spatial postal code data. So that if you're a member of one of the academic institutions, a SMART consortium, which is very extensive, that's part of the requirements for that. If not, you're able to email us, and we can usually work something out with that. So once we've done that, what we actually do is take the data and we'll extract it, for example, at the provincial level, and then provide you with a zipped file in CSV format, which is easily imported into different software. So it's quite flexible that way, and it's fairly compact to distribute. And of course, we also have metadata documentation. So here we have a summary of the data itself in terms of how it was developed, and then sources of information you can go to in terms of citing and the required conditions of use that the providers wish to include with that. So all of that is included with all the data sets. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and discuss a little bit about the data users themselves. So what I've done here is you're looking at is a word cloud which has been generated from all the user forums. So I've input all the project summaries and the data that they've requested. And what we see here is words that are in the middle, in the center, are effectively more important, and they're more central themes to the studies themselves. So we see general words like health and exposure, air, and then some of the actual data themselves like greenness and PM 2.5 show up. And then as you move towards the outer edges, you start to see a lot of variety in the words. So you have some of the specific studies themselves where I look at child and aged. You may look at infant, or so you're getting detailed aspects about the studies themselves, including some of the diseases that they're looking at. So it provides us with a good overview of the data users. In terms of some other information here, it's interesting. We have a top 5 set of data that I won't go into, but geographically, the studies are about 50% of them are at the provincial level, 30% are Canada-wide, and 20% are at that local scale. So we have currently about 75 unique researchers who are participating in Canoe studies. And I think this is a really good stat here, is about 50% of these projects actually have students involved. So I think that's a key element of being able to involve students in this as well. And finally, the average number of data sets that were acquired was 7. So why is that important? Well, I think it reiterates what Jeff was talking about in terms of people, Canoe helping for researchers to look at multiple exposures or cumulative exposures. So in fact, our data users are moving in that direction. So what about some of the lessons learned from this? So again, I think it's important to keep in context that we are a 1-year working prototype with this. So there's been some bumps along the way, but I think this is how we learn and move forward with this. So collaboration is key, right? So why is collaboration key? Well, effectively making the data available and integrating the data providers introduces their expertise to the whole cycle, right? And I think that's really important to providing quality data. Data is also expensive, right? So in a lot of ways, collaboration equals cost effectiveness, right? And collaboration increases the lifespan of the data as well. So we all want to make sure our data are used and are available. And it's a way to democratize data, right? Another lesson learned is that value-added content here is critical. So having that metadata, having documentation to support it, and also in some cases having consultation with the data users to provide some advice, I think is key. Why is that key? Well, it adds trust, right? So it adds trust to the data, and data are not always clean and not perfect, as we all know. So I think that's important to remember, and documenting that and moving forward with that is important. Researchers also want guidance, right, on how to use the data. So that's part of that added value-added content that we provide. And it also encourages users to step outside of their bubble, right? So if you're researching one particular exposure, This makes it a little easier to step inside and say, I want to look at multiple exposures, right? So it sort of helps people to explore that. And the third aspect is that better data, not always more data, right? I mean, it's quite easily in some cases just to take data and, more and more data. Is that better? No, not necessarily. We want to offer sort of quality curated data so that data users are not overwhelmed by the number of choices there. So it helps people navigate and explore data and useful data. And again, all data takes resources, right? So it's obviously, even if it's open source data, we still have to support and manage those data sets in some regard. So the last slide here, I'll talk about some of the future challenges that we have and improvements. And so this overlaps a little bit with the previous slide, but data user experience is something that we want to improve continually, right? So improving the user experience beyond what it is currently, and it means even expanding the number of data users. And how we're doing this, currently we're actually working on some custom tools, which our speakers and Maddie will talk a bit about that, in terms of the custom tools that we're developing for spatial mapping and spatial and temporal averaging, so that we can actually display some of this information in terms of visualization. And also we want to track users a bit more, some follow-up surveys to get an idea of how they're using these data and how we can improve the user experience. A second aspect is data discovery and content selection. This is always going to be a challenge. We really need to balance the needs of users with what our resources are, right? So that's sort of that constant balance that we're going to have to look at. In terms of data discovery, we really want to find these hidden data, right? If you look at it and think in terms of data, if they remain hidden away on your desktop or your storage devices, they're of no use to people, right? And I think being able to do that and link it provides that extra bit of data for people to investigate and sort of innovate, which leads to my next point here is, what about these small data sets, regional city data sets that sometimes people are very interested in? Well, these sort of long tail data sets, numerous, may provide a lot of, how do we manage these and how do we bring them in? Because they may provide a lot of sort of deeper value to understanding things at the local level. And the last point here is sustainability of the data platform, right? So making this platform extensible into the future beyond its original purpose in a lot of ways. So how do we do this? Well, we're really building tools to facilitate direct access so that users can get access to the data and clip and extract data themselves. And also working with Canoe members to better understand and articulate the value of having an environmental exposure data platform. And finally, meeting the needs of the users is key to sustainability, right? So we've realized that a lot of them want to have some need for custom analytics and processing. That's come up many times. And then also the idea of Canoe as a place to store your data, right? So to save, it's going to be saved, documented, and accessible. So I think that's something that researchers and data users have expressed to us as being an important aspect to move forward with. So that said, you know where to find us. You can portage your way upstairs to our booth or to our website.